The phrase, "a country that accidentally invaded itself," sounds like a joke, a geographical punchline. But in military history, there are moments when an army attacks its own territory with lethal consequences. In 1788, the Austrian Empire was mobilizing for a war that would demonstrate exactly how such a paradox occurs. Led by Emperor Joseph II, the military began its march south. Looking at this 18th century map, we can see the Principality of Transylvania. This was the theater of operations for a massive force of 100,000 men marching to engage the Ottoman Empire. This army was far from a unified front. Austrians, Hungarians, Serbs, Croats, and Italians formed a single massive column. Most didn't share a language. Regiments couldn't communicate, and soldiers couldn't understand officers from other divisions. This language barrier essentially partitioned the force into isolated blocks of soldiers, turning the massive formation into a powder keg, marching blindly toward a single spark. On the night of September 17th, a vanguard of Austrian cavalry, the Hussars, crossed the Timush River to scout for the Ottoman enemy. They found no signs of the Turkish army. Instead, they stumbled upon an encampment of local Romani merchants. The merchants were selling schnapps. The Hussars abandoned their duties, bought the alcohol, and began drinking heavily. Shortly after, a detachment of Austrian infantry crossed the river. They saw the Hussars with the alcohol and demanded a share of the schnapps for themselves. The drunken Hussars refused to share. They gathered the wooden barrels and constructed a makeshift wall, turning the position into a fortified stash of booze. A minor lack of discipline had devolved into a petty squabble. In their drunken state, the soldiers had lost sight of the fact that they were currently leading an imperial invasion. The argument quickly turned into a violent physical fight. Then, a single shot was fired into the night air. Someone in the chaos shouted, "Pritchi, Turchi," the warning for a Turkish attack. Despite the lack of an actual enemy, the cry of "Turks" triggered an immediate reflexive terror. Panicked and drunk, the Hussars fled back across the river. They charged toward their own main camp, where 100,000 soldiers were currently sleeping. Thousands of soldiers woke up to the sound of screaming men and stampeding horses. In the darkness, they assumed the Ottoman army had breached their lines. The command structure failed. Officers began shouting orders in German, Hungarian, and Italian to organize a defense. To soldiers who didn't speak those languages, these attempts to restore order sounded like foreign invaders, confirming their fears that the camp was overrun. The system had reached its breaking point. What began as a dispute over alcohol was now a full-scale, self-inflicted massacre. The panic reached the artillery lines. Blinded by the night, Austrian gunners aimed their cannons at the dark woods and opened fire, blasting their own infantry formations to pieces. The camp dissolved into a total rout. Emperor Joseph II was knocked from his horse and nearly trampled as his own army fled from itself. By dawn, the battle was over. The Austrian army had suffered over 10,000 casualties, killed and wounded entirely by their own comrades. 2 days later, the actual Ottoman army finally arrived at Karansebes. They found the town abandoned and the surrounding fields littered with dead Austrian soldiers. They took the position without having to fire a single shot. The Ottomans secured their victory without a skirmish. The internal collapse of the Austrian system had accomplished what no foreign invader could.